Okay, this is a more in-depth look on how to do something like homework number 1.2, number 12. This is otherwise known as the basketball question. So essentially, we've got a function over here which talks about the height of a ball based on how far away you are from the foul line. So I'm going to underline and highlight all the relevant parts of the question. That part of this reason, or part of the reason that this question is tricky is because they bombard you with some numbers that don't actually mean anything for your question. You don't actually need them. They're actually there to sort of explain where the numbers come from in the question. So for example, see x is the forward distance in front of the foul line. All right, let's underline that. That's also important. There we go. And v is the initial velocity over here. And we are given an initial velocity as well. Okay, so this part in the beginning and every other part of this question, except for the underlined parts, it's fluff to explain why this works to model the height. If you don't care and you just trust that this models the height, then actually the rest of it's pretty useless. So let's actually move on to the questions that we're being asked to solve. So part A is saying find the height of the ball after it's traveled 7 feet in front of the foul line. Another way to translate this would be to find h of x when x is equal to 7. Now, how did I come up with that translation? I'm going back to what h represents. H is my height, and x is distance in front of the foul line. Okay, so it says 7 feet in front of the foul line. That's x, so x must be 7. It says find height. Height is h. So in other words, I'm plugging in 7 for x and seeing what comes out. And you are fully intended to do this one on a calculator, so I will be doing this one on a calculator. If you do not have a calculator, I recommend borrowing a graphing calculator from the Urban Life Mile. If you're there working on your lab and stuff, just hand in your student ID and they're going to give you a calculator for the duration of your session. You are fully intended to do this on a calculator. Don't do this by hand. You will suffer. Okay, so h of 7 is equal to, everywhere I used to see an x in this equation over here, it's now going to get replaced by a 7. So I see an x over here. This is really going to be 7 squared. I see an x over here. It's really a 7. I don't actually need it in parentheses, so I'm going to get rid of that. Now, my problem is, I don't know what this number actually is. Why? Because I still have v squared on the bottom. What's v? Well, let's take it back to this. V is the initial velocity. And hey, wait a second. They told us that this is going to be 22 feet per second. So I actually do know what v is supposed to be. V is supposed to be 22. So I'm going to go ahead and swap this v out for 22. Now you may be just asking like, well, if it's supposed to be 22, well, then why did they bother making it v anyway? Like, why didn't they just write 22 under here? Well, the reason is all of you have randomized questions. So for you, it may not actually be 22. For you, it could be a completely different number. So basically, this is a way to have everyone do a slightly different question and get a slightly different answer. But yeah, they could have just put 22 over here and it would work just as well for this question. So now I don't recommend doing this by hand. What I'm going to do is copy paste this and have a calculator do this for me. Be very careful if you're typing this in onto a calculator yourself. It's very easy to make a typo and end up with the wrong answer. However, I am going to use Wolfram Alpha, which is a nice, very helpful website. And you can see I just copy pasted and it accepted it right away. And it's going to give me the exact result simplified down all the way. You don't want to use, actually, hold up. It says, yeah, it does not want, so, okay. Pearson, if it wants a decimal answer, it'll say something like in parentheses, round your answer to 2 decimal places. So because it doesn't say that, I have to actually write the like closed form answer, which is the simplified fraction. So it's going to be 94/11. Okay. So you'll notice part B is a remix of part A. The only difference is I need to plug in 8 instead of 7. So I'm going to go ahead and skip over this part for right now because it's going to be the exact same process, except I'm going to have an 8 instead of a 7. So we will do this. Find additional points and graph the path of the basketball. So this one is a multiple choice selection, but you'll notice that all of the graphs are from x equals 15 to y equals 25. So what you're going to want to do is if you're graphing this, or like literally on the calculators that are available in the mile, what you would want to do is change your window. So I'll make a note of that here. Change your window on the graphing calculator to match the windows of the multiple choice answers. In this case, x is going to go from 0 to 25, and y is going to go from 0 to 15, I believe. It's one of those, I might have actually flipped the 25 and the 15. I don't remember off the top of my head. But for what I'm going to do, I'm just going to use Desmos because I have the ability to stream this. I can't stream my calculator. So what I'm going to do is just copy paste my function over here. Actually, it's better for me to copy paste this one, which is why I love Desmos so much. All right. And I'm going to make this equal to 22. And you'll notice that, so this is my picture right now, but I mentioned something about keeping the window correct because this may or may not look like one of the answers you have. I actually think it does, so this should be enough to tell you which answer it is because I think all the pictures look very different. But one thing that you want to double check on Desmos, the way that you adjust the window is over here. So I'm going to say x goes from 0 to 25, and now I'm going to say y goes from 0 to 15, not 158, 15. And now this should pretty much look exactly like one of the answers because I made sure my window was oriented the same way. So I have the same stretch that I'm looking at. It may also have been flipped where it was 25 and 15, but I think it was this. This is enough to tell you which answer to pick. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and screenshot that and add that into my document here so we can reference it later. I'm going to reference it by pulling over the window anyway, but I'll just have it here for posterity. For part D, it says the center of the hoop is located 10 feet above the floor and 15 feet in front of the foul line. Will the ball go through the hoop? This is a fancy way of asking, is the point 10, 15, or sorry, 15, 10 on the graph? So I'm going to say x is equal to 15 because it says 15 feet in front of the foul line. The question is really saying, is h of 15, when I plug 15 in, do I get 10? Right? So it's basically saying if I put so this is kind of the path of the ball, if you want to think about it. If I put the hoop at 10, 15, which is way up here, oh, sorry, I have it the other way around, where it is 15, 10 over here. If I put my hoop over here, does the path of the ball go through the hoop? And I'm going to go ahead and put this over here. So if I plug in 15 and I get out 10, this is where my hoop is. Does the ball go through the hoop? The answer is no. This point is not on this graph over here. Okay. Another way that you can check this, you can sort of do this by hand. Another way to do this would be, so I'm going to go ahead and go back to my original function over here. I want the one that has the 22 in it. Okay, so instead, I'm going to actually plug in 15 for my x. I'm going to plug in 15 for my x and 15 for my x here. And I'm going to see, according to Wolfram Alpha, what does this actually give me? So here's Wolfram Alpha. I'm going to change my numbers slightly. I'm going to have it simplify this. It tells me I get 6 over 11. That's not even 1. I definitely don't get 10. This is not going to go through the hoop. So I'm going to say this is equal to 6 over 11, which does not equal 10. So the ball will not make it through the hoop. All right, this is how to tackle the basketball question. It is primarily meant for you to do on the calculator. Do not do this by hand. You will really struggle because you'll have to make common denominators with like 22 squared, and that is not fun. You do not want to do that. So do this on a calculator, save yourself some trouble. Okay,